Last Thursday evening, a little girl called Maddie was taken from the family hotel room in the Algarve in southern Portugal.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until.
Hello and a warm welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. One of the most important tools in the true crime toolbox is identity. In the Madeleine McCann case, most start and end with the fact that Madeleine's parents were doctors. But what happens if we take it a step further and ask, what kind of doctors? Who were they as people? What were they interested in? Well, we see that Kate worked briefly in obstetrics and gynecology, and then anesthetics. We see that Kate's friend Fiona Payne, Dr. Fiona Payne, was also an anesthetist at the time of Madeleine's disappearance. Pulling back even further, we see Kate was born in 1968 in Hayton, which is near Liverpool. Liverpool is Everton country, and we know in one of the final photos before her death, Madeleine is pictured wearing an Everton shirt. Incidentally, this would have been a far better photo to hand out than the photo that was handed out in the very beginning, as one can see the true color of her hair, one has a reasonable idea of her age, and one can see the imperfection in her one eye, all in a single photo. Ironically, it seems like the photo that was given out in Portugal and the photos that were displayed in England were different. We also know that the McCanns and their pals were a sporty group as a whole, often playing tennis, and tennis features prominently in the "Where were you on May 3rd" statements in particular. One of the last things Jerry did before dinner on May 3rd was play tennis. We also see both the parents jogging after Madeleine's disappearance, and Kate mentions going for a jog on the afternoon of the day Madeleine vanished. So that was literally one of the last things she did before Madeleine disappeared. Something sporty. Quoting from her book Madeleine, Kate writes, "Having arranged for Jerry to meet the children, I opted to go for a run along the beach, where I spotted the rest of our holiday group. They saw me and shouted some words of encouragement." Now, intertextually, we know that the Watts family dressed in Steelers clothing, which indicates how football and sport was part of that family's culture once upon a time. In fact, on the night prior to the murders in the Watts case, Watts was apparently watching sport on television, including golf. When officers arrived the following day, they found the television on, tuned to a sports station. An excerpt from the discovery reads, "Upon entry to the home, I immediately noticed a strong odor of cleaning chemicals. The home appeared spotless and the carpet had noticeable vacuum lines. As we walked to the kitchen living room area, I observed that the television was on a sports show." But back to football. Now you might say, just because Kate is from Liverpool isn't much of a connection to football in general, or to Everton in particular. Well, no. Kate also mentions a specific link to football in her book. About 2 years before the incident in Praia da Luz, an ex-professional football player, a great uncle of Madeleine's no less, once had a heart attack in front of the McCanns in their home, by all accounts. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Bear in mind, I've just covered the same thing, the sport narrative, in the Fotis Doulos case. I did that in a live last night. So if you find this analysis very interesting, very surprising, you might find that one interesting as well. I will also be doing a statement analysis, body language analysis of Chris Watts' sermon on the porch in a live later this week. So look out for that. If you're enjoying this analysis, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So again, we return to Kate McCann's book, and she writes the following. 3 days before I went into hospital, this was to give birth to the twins, Jerry's Uncle Pat and Aunt Alexis came up from Essex to see us, and within an hour of their arrival, Uncle Pat, an ex-professional footballer, collapsed with a heart attack. But this is Jerry's uncle, not Kate's. This suggests that Kate's interest in football actually came from Jerry, and Jerry's support of Everton was because of Kate's connection to Liverpool. Curiously, Kate mentions Everton only 6 times in her book. 2 references are regarding the name of the school she attended, Everton Valley, which is mentioned twice, and then there's a 3rd reference in the index, which doesn't really count as one. So it's really just 3 references to Everton Football Club. Football is also mentioned 6 times, including a reference to her old life, where Kate writes about what she once did to relax. What was that? Well, watch television, read a book, listen to music, or follow the football. Well, what do people do when they're on holiday? Relax. And Kate's just given us a list of things that she would do to relax. What is included in that list? Watching the football. When I was in Praia de Luz in May 2019, it was an opportunity to get into the real fabric of the case, into the timeline at the time that all of this took place. And when you do that, when you're in the time and the place, many unexpected insights sneak up on you. Ironically, what I think is one of the most important analyses I've done on this case, certainly on YouTube in the last few weeks, what's the least watched on YouTube. It's funny how things go. In any event, while I was in Praia de Luz in May, I noticed how much news there was of football, specifically the European League and the Premier League, playing out in real time in May. And then you've got to ask, what impact did that have on the people in this case? And the answer is, well, if they didn't really care about football, not much of an impact. Conversely, if they did care a lot about football, if, for example, you had an uncle who was an ex-professional football player, if you're so interested in football, you were dressing your kids in football paraphernalia, and who doesn't do that? Well, then likely you would be influenced by it. And so I did notice while I was there, it was in the papers, it was on local television. You'd walk past a bar or into a bar, what was on? Football. In other words, when the McCanns were on holiday, the holiday where Madeleine McCann disappeared, where there was an incident regarding their daughter, this was part of what they saw and experienced each night. You could say in peripheral vision, or perhaps it was the center of their attention while they were in Luz. So what was the status of Everton in 2007? Well, they did quite well. They finished 6th in the Premier League, a championship that started in mid-August 2006 and concluded, guess when? In May 2007, the month that Madeleine disappeared. In 2007, the UEFA Cup final also took place in, guess where? Glasgow, Scotland. Jerry McCann was born in Glasgow, Scotland in 1968. In 99% of the focus directed at the McCanns and the Tapa 7, attention is paid to checks, time frames, seating arrangements and whatnot. Everything except the thing that was likely tearing these British parents away from their children, certainly tearing their attention away from their children. Lost in the conversation about whether parents should have left the children where they were is what the parents were so excited about that would get their attention distracted in the first place. Football could be the answer. Do you see that? They could watch football as a group in the tapas bar. Also, they could watch football at home, meaning in their apartments on television. And is football the sort of thing that can almost drown out things that are going on elsewhere? Have you ever watched football and forgotten what was in the oven or lost track of time in some way?
Because Kate had been moaning that you'd been gone a long time watching the football.
I'm almost certain that when I came out, I came over and he was here.
Although we have to be careful taking any of these statements at face value, we do have potential confirmation here that even Jerry's companions thought he watched a lot of football. So why is it even important? Firstly, the football narrative provides a possible and even probable basis for why the group wanted to be in the tapas bar situation to begin with. Isn't it because games were being televised at night, starting from around 8:30 or so and ending at around 10 p.m.? Secondly, many have blamed the tapas bar as being the venue that took parents away from their children or distracted parents from their parental duties. But what we see here is it could have been football as well. Thirdly, you could have a scenario without even being in the tapas bar where children are in the same area as their parents, but while distracted and watching television, something happens, even while they're physically there, but mentally perhaps somewhere else. In other words, is it possible that something happened to Madeleine while she was in the apartment, and while the McCanns were in the apartment, one or both of her parents? And this something could have happened because someone was distracted because he or she was watching football. I don't think there's any doubt that the issue here was that parents were distracted. Parents' hearts, minds, attentions, whatever, were somewhere else when whatever happened to Madeleine happened. I think the area that needs to be discussed and thought about in more detail is where were they and what were they busy with. And this is something that you never hear spoken about. The cadaver odor found under the balcony and elsewhere suggests that Madeleine could have fallen and lain where she fell for as long as an hour before anyone realized where she was. Now, is there any additional information about football in Kate's book? Well, just this. Kate writes, Jerry's ex-boss, who was the Scotland football team doctor, spoke to Sir Alex Ferguson on our behalf. Sir Alex got in touch with David Beckham, and he instantly agreed to do it. Do what? Well, do this.
We need to do everything possible to help the police with their inquiries in finding her. If you have seen this little girl...
So, to reiterate, this intervention from David Beckham came from Jerry's side of the equation through his ex-boss, who is an ex-football team doctor. And that shows you again the level to which the McCanns were, to some extent, intermingled in football, in the football fabric. Curiously, when the McCanns hit the jackpot by getting the Madeleine appeal videos to be broadcast both during the FA Cup final and the UEFA Cup final in August 2007, the BBC refused to broadcast the appeal on their television networks. Now, if you think about the timeline, what was going on when these games were being played in August, and what was going on back in prior deluge, well, bear in mind, between the 1st and the 7th of August 2007, Martin Grimes was deploying Eddie and Keeler through the McCann's apartment. In a real sense, the football crowds drowned out the barking dogs. And so if football has any role in what happened to Madeleine, it certainly did the McCanns a huge favor, certainly in the aftermath, in terms of the goodwill gestures towards them. According to the Daily Mail, in an article posted about a week before Christmas, quote, later the club Everton marked the 1-year anniversary of Madeleine's disappearance by lighting up the stadium. Kate also mentions this moment nostalgically in her book. She writes, all over Britain and beyond, candles and lanterns were lit, and torches shone heavenwards. Everton Football Club illuminated the night sky with their floodlights, and Chinese lanterns were released in Rothley. The Daily Mail article goes on to note, quote, the following year, Everton went a step further, launching an international campaign to re-energize the search for Maddie. Traveling to Portugal, the Toffees printed thousands of T-shirts with the message, we're still looking for you, on them. The club printed 3,000 of the new shirts in English, with the same number created in Portuguese. Speaking at the time, the late Mr. Kenwright said, this is just our way of reminding people, not just in the UK and Portugal, but across the globe, that this little child is out there somewhere. This article from the 19th of December last year talks about Kate McCann's close bond with the Everton chairman Bill Kenwright, a former actor. Madeleine McCann's mother makes a rare public appearance to attend his memorial service, and once again she's dressed in the Everton gear. The article notes the McCanns have always been fans of Everton. We also know that the McCanns, 7 years after Madeleine's disappearance in 2014, they were pictured in a stadium alongside the former actor, that's Kenwright, watching Everton play at their home ground, Goodison Park. I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.